We're holding at the bottom of 100B1. 100B1, literally the last line on 100B1 on the right-hand column. Right, Oisam B'nei Adam. Exactly. So, as we mentioned yesterday, we are going into the fascinating halacha l'maisa, our halachas regarding Kiddush, and the argument whether you require Kiddush b'makom suda. Does Kiddush have to be said in the place where the meal is going to take place? Or no, Kiddush is Kiddush, a Suda is Suda. I have to be Mekadesh, I have to consecrate, I have to make holy the day of Shabbos, the day of Yom Tov, but it doesn't have to do anything with the meal in and of itself. The second question, of course, is going to be, what is a meal? Does that mean a full-fledged meal? Or does that mean a Kiddush in shul? A little cake and herring in shul. So we're going to see this all in the upcoming daf that we're going to do. It is not a hard daf, and we probably could finish this daf if we wanted to in 15 minutes, but it may take us a little longer because I'm sure we'll get into discussions. So it happens to be that even today in Ashkenazic shuls, okay, in shuls of German tradition, that after davening of Kabbalah Shabbos, after Friday night davening, they make Kiddush in shul. The Gabbai gets up, pours a cup of wine, and he says, Vayichulu, Bari Priyagofen, and then the bracha of Mekadesh HaShabbos. Okay? So that's the case that we're starting off over here. Oisam b'nei Adam shekidshu b'beis HaKnesses. Regarding those people who make Kiddush in the shul, what does it mean, those people? Sounds very racist. Those people. So Oisa people meaning the chazan who is making the Kiddush, or those who are listening to the Kiddush. From here we see Shemea Ka'oina. Hearing is like saying. So those who hear the Kiddush are see the Kiddush by the one who makes the Kiddush, which means that while lichatchila in the first place, we would like everyone to get a taste of the wine that's being made Kiddush over the cup of wine, pour it out to everybody a little bit like we do Friday night, which is the ikar, the most essential of the Kiddushes that we make. Nonetheless, b'di'evet, de facto, if that does not take place, it's okay. The other people listening do not really de facto have to drink from the wine or the grape juice because they were already yaitza al yidei shemea ka'ina. Hearing is like being mekayim the mitzvah. So that's what we said. Oisa. So once again, oisa b'nei adam. Those people. That means the chazan who says it or the people listening. Shekidshu b'beis HaKnesses, that make Kiddush in the shul. Amar Rav, says Rav, Yedei Yayin Lo Yotzu. They do not discharge their obligation to make the bracha of Borei Pri Hagofen on the wine that they have at home. And therefore they have to say again, Borei Pri Hagofen, again in their house. Look at the Rashi. The Rashi on top, on the left-hand side, the last Rashi over there. Yedei yayin lo yotzu, she'im yesh lehem yayin lishtos b'boteihem. If they have wine to drink in their homes, chayovim levorech borei pri hagofen. They are mechayev to make a borei pri hagofen again in the house. She'enam peturim b'birchas hakois. because they did not get pottered up from making those additional brachas by the bracha that was made on the kais in the shul. HaKais yain, v'loi bracha me'acha she'akiru mimikaimon. Once they moved from their place, from the shul to their home, the bracha to cover the basic bracha of Bayrei Pri HaGofen is not covered just because you heard a bracha of Bayrei Pri HaGofen in shul. You have to make your own brachas Bayrei Pri HaGofen at home. However, says Rav, Yedei Kiddush, but regarding being Mekadesh, consecrating the Shabbos with the bracha of Mekadesh HaShabbos, which is, of course, to sanctify the Shabbos, which is the bracha that we make Friday night, you have discharged your chiyuv of making Kiddush. You have discharged your obligation to make Kiddush with the Kiddush that is made in the shul and not in your home. In other words, everybody take a look at the Rashbam on the bottom, the second to last one. The second to last one, so about 12 lines from the bottom. Yedei Kiddush Yotzer, Afa Pi Shaloi Shasu, even though the person listening to the Chazan did not drink from the wine, the Kaibalon, the Hamekadish Sorach Shetoyim, the one making the Kiddush, the Chazan has to drink. Imroi Toam Ela Echad Mehem, and if only one of the people over there drink from the wine, so let's say the Chazan who made the Kiddush is allergic to wine, somebody else listening could drink from the wine, and Yatsu Kulan Yedei Chavasan, and they are all, the one who said it and the ones who are listening, are Yaitzer their chiyuv of being sanctifying the Shabbos with the cup that was drank in shul. Now, just give Kedemuchach Beirin. Now, the next words, Umiyu, but Lechatchila, in the first place, Sarach Shutayim Kulam. Everybody should really drink a little bit from the kais, which is the reason why Friday night we pour out of our kaises and pour out a little bit to everybody around the table to try to do the mitzvah of sanctification in the correct way. And then, if this was done in shul, Kiddush was made in shul, you don't have to repeat this at home. Why not? The loy boy, because Rav does not require Kiddush b'makayim suda. He does not require sanctification of Shabbos b'makayim suda at the place of the meal. Hilkach, therefore, apagav deloy ochlu b'beis haKnesses. Nafki, even though you didn't eat anything in the shul, you merely heard the Kiddush, you didn't even drink from the Kiddush cup, Yaitse, according to Rav, you've sanctified the Shabbos. It's not the Makom Suda, it's not in the place of the Suda, it don't matter. Rav says, I do not require Kiddush b'Makom Suda. Okay, the Shmuel Amar, the Shmuel says, and now we're on to the Eis Daf, Kuf Aleph, Omid Aleph. Af, says Shmuel, Af Yedei Kiddush lo yotza. Even Yedei Kiddush, you're not yotza. That means if Kiddush is made in shul, after Kabbalah Shabbos thing, you make Kiddush, says Shmuel, you're not Yoitza. Not only you're not Yoitza Yedei Yayin, that at home you have to make a Bayrei Pri HaGofen, but you even have to go home and make the whole Kiddush of Mekadesh HaShabbos. Look at Tosfos, the top Tosfos, left-hand corner. Aki de Kiddush lo Yotzer. The Ein Kiddush, according to Shmuel, the Ein Kiddush ela b'Makom Suda. There is no such thing as sanctification of the Shabbos or sanctification of the Yom Tov Ella b'makom suda, only in the place of the meal. Mishum diksiv, because it says in Yeshaya, v'karasa la Shabbos oneg, and you should call to your Shabbos a delight. And what is a delight? This is what we spoke about yesterday. This is a delight, is having meals. Kloima, b'makom kriyas kiddush, in the place that you say the Kiddush, in the place that you announce the sanctification of the Shabbos, Sham Tehei Oinig, that should be the place of your delight. So therefore you require Kiddush b'makom suda. So nobody, according to Shmuel, is Yotze the Chiyuv of neither saying Borei Pri Hagofen, and nobody is Yotze the Chiyuv of Kiddush Mekadosh Shabbos with the Kiddush that's made in Shul. So everybody asks the question, of course. So why in the world are they making Kiddush in Shul, according to Shmuel? The Gemara is obviously going to ask that question. So now, first we go to Rav. Ela Rav, Rama le Kiddush b'beisei. According to Rav, if you're Yotze your Chiyuv of sanctifying the day, you're Yotze your Chiyuv to sanctify the day with the Kiddush that you hear in Shul in the Beis HaKnesses. Why are you going home and repeating it? Says the Gemara, Kedei lahaitzi banav ubnei beisai. In order to be Yotze your children and the members of your house, i.e. your wife and daughters and sons, who did not come with you to Shul. So they didn't hear Kiddush yet, so you have to be mighty with them. This seems obvious. The Gemara is actually saying a huge, huge novelty, a huge, huge Chiddush, that even though I was Yotze my Chiyuv, I was Yotze my Chiyuv with the Kiddush that was made in Shul, which means I already covered my obligation to sanctify the day. Nonetheless, even though I was Yotze, I'm still allowed to repeat the Kiddush and be Moitzi a second person. That means I'm allowed to say Hashem's name, Shem and Malchus, Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, and be Moitzi a second person, so that they cover their obligation to sanctify the day, even though I already covered my obligation. That's a huge Chiddush. That's a novel.
Is it similar to Havdalah?
Yes, it is. And Charlie, if you're a little patient, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. Exactly. Actually, we're going to along the way here, it's going to bang into Havdalah, but that is exact. Actually, we said it sort of yesterday, that Havdalah, remember, they're eating their Shalosh Shudas, and they go all the way into Havdalah. One person makes the Havdalah, and he's exactly the same thing. And in fact, with Havdalah, what Charlie is saying, if somebody, and in a lot of places they make Havdalah in Shul, as we're going to see why in a second. But even if, let's say you made Havdalah, and then your kids come home later, your daughters come home later, you can make Havdalah again. It's the same idea. Now that is not as simple because we're going to make Kodesh L'chol. But when you go from Shabbos to Yom Tov, make Kodesh L'Kodesh, from sanctification to sanctification, you certainly could do it. Okay? So now, we're going to get all of this that you're asking, Charlie, is coming up over the next couple of dafim. Exactly right. Like I said, this perek is one of the most beautiful parakim because it literally, this applies to what we do on a week-to-week basis, on a month-to-month basis. You're going to see there's a lot of stuff buried within every word here. So now we covered Rav, okay? Shmuel, the third line from the top, inside the Gemara. Shmuel, according to Shmuel, you don't cover your B'nei Pri, and you're not Yotze, the top line of the Gemara, Af Yidei Kiddush Lo Yotze, because you need Kiddush b'makom suda, you need sanctification at the same place as the meal. Therefore, why in the world are they wasting time and saying Kiddush and Shul, right? It accomplishes nothing. And for the Gemara, la fuke archem yedei chavosim, in order to allow strangers, visitors, to be yotzei the yedei chavosim, the achru v'shastu v'ganu v'beis kinishta, who go ahead and will actually go ahead for they eat, drink, and sleep in the shul. In other words, especially in those days, we had beggars that came from city to city, and were here today, gone tomorrow. They would end up in shul. The shul would make sure that it had kiddush and food and a place for them to lay down. And again, I say it's kedai that if you're ever in Borough Park, to go to Shemesh Shabbos, which is a small little shul on a corner of 53rd and 13th, and downstairs in Shemesh Shabbos, they have food laid out constantly, and people do unfortunately go to sleep there if they have nowhere else to sleep. Okay? So it says like this, Ve'oz the Shmuel the Tameh, and Shmuel in fact is following his own reasoning, the Amar Shmuel, and as you can see, there's a little base, if you look in the Gemara itself, there's a little base telling us that the Rambam paskins exactly like this. And Kiddush ela b'makom suda. There's no such thing as Kiddush unless it's in the place of the Suda. So for the Archim, for the visitors, for the poor people that are visiting our town, who are staying in the shul, this is their place of their meals. So we make a Kiddush for them in shul. Savamine. So therefore the Gemara says like this, I'm sorry, Savamine, had the Talmidim of the yeshiva thought like this. Hani, this that Shmuel says, ain't Kiddush ela b'makom suda. Hani meaning bias lebias. If one is going from one house to another house, the Kiddush of one house does not cover my obligation for Kiddush in another house because my meal is in the other house. From one place and another place in one house, for an example, from a second floor to a first floor, as long as you're all under one roof. So you can make Kiddush on the second floor and eat the meal on the first floor. Loi, that would not be a problem. Shmuel would agree that that's okay. Amalei Rab Onan Bar Khalifa. Said Rab Onan Bar Khalifa, Zimnin the Sagian Habe Kamei B'Shmuel. Many times I was together with Shmuel, V'nochis me igro la'ara v'hoda mekadesh, and he would go down from the roof, i.e. the second floor, to the ground floor where the meal was, and then say Kiddush. So in other words, Shmuel will even say, ain't Kiddush b'makom suda under one roof. In other words, from floor to floor, it's not a problem. Now, but from corner to corner of one room, as long as that there is no break in the middle of the room, no mechitza in the middle of the room, then that's not a problem. But if there's a mechitza, that is a problem. So in fact, in shuls, where the women are on one side of the mechitza and the men are on another side of the mechitzas, the husbands usually go to the corner of the mechitza and bring their wives there so that they can make Kiddush. Because a mechitza breaks the room into two rooms. And then you have a problem of Ein Kiddush b'makom suda. Va'af Rav Huna Savah Ein Kiddush ela b'makom suda. And Rav Huna too holds that Kiddush only works b'makom suda. The Rav Huna Kaddish, because it once happened that Rav Huna made Kiddush, and then the Ikule Shroga, the electricity went out. It was Texas, and the electricity went out. And so, of course, you can't eat in the dark. The rabba. And so he brought all of his kalim, all of his utensils to the chuppah house of his son Rabba Bar Rav Huna, who was getting married, who was in the middle of Sheva Brachos, the Habashraga, and there they made sure they had a generator so the electricity was still on. The Kiddush v'toyim midi, and he recited Kiddush and he tasted something. You'll notice It doesn't say that he sat for the meal. He made Kiddush and he tasted something. Alma Kesavar and Kiddush Ela b'makom Suda. You see, from here, there's the only thing, Ein Kiddush Ela b'makom Suda. From here, you see how we handle Keddashim and Shul. You can make Kiddush. As long as you eat something, you've established the idea of a meal, even if that something is merely a piece of cake. And we're going to see it clearer a little further on. Ba'af Rabbo, and even Rabbo Saba Ein Kiddush Ela b'makom Suda. And Rabbo holds also that there's no Kiddush Ela b'makom Suda. The Omar Abaye, because Abaye said, and now we're on 101A2. 101A2. Ki habi beimar, when I was a student, when I was a Talmud in the yeshiva of Rabbo, ki habi mikadesh, when he would make Kiddush, listen to this, Amalani would tell us, Temiu midi, taste something. In other words, if now we're making Kiddush after davening, I'm making Kiddush for you guys, do me a favor, eat something. You're planning on going home to eat your meals. You're planning on going home to eat your Suda. Nonetheless, go ahead now and eat something after I make Kiddush. Perhaps you'll go back to your homes, to your lodgings. Shraga, and your lamp will become extinguished. The electricity will go out. And it will turn out that you didn't make Kiddush in the house that you generally eat, because you're not going to eat in the dark, and now you got a problem of Kiddush b'makom Suda. And therefore the Kiddush that you heard here will not fulfill your obligation, because you require Kiddush b'makom Suda, and Kiddush Ela b'makom Suda. So do me a favor and have a piece of cake. And this is how you see. We make Kiddush in Shul, we take a piece of cake and herring, and then we go home and we don't make Kiddush again. And the reason for that is because once you took a bite, you're good to go, right? The definition of a Suda is not what we think a formal. It means connecting and eating of food to the sanctification. If you, with the sanctification, you connect it with a bite of food, probably a kazayas of food, right? A size of an olive, because that's the Shir Akila. That's the classic volume for eating. After that, you can go home and have your regular meal. So, Frank the Gemara, Aini, is this true that Rabbah really agrees with Shmuel? Ain Kiddush Ela b'makom Suda, but Omer Abaye, but Abaye says, Kol mili demar habi b'kirah. In all cases, what he called Rabbah always held like Rav, not like Shmuel. He always held like Rav, not like Shmuel, except in three cases. The Var, Mahani, Talas, the Ovid, Kishmuel. With the exception of these three cases, that he went like Shmuel. Matirimi beged lebeged. He said, I'm allowed to take tzitzis off an old garment of tzitzis and put these tzitzis now on a new garment. Rav says you're not allowed to do that. Because Rav said you got to take care of Rabbi Sachs. If you guys look it up, you'll see Rav Sachs has a whole conversation about this. Rav says you got to focus on your mitzvah, right? Shmuel says no, Shmuel was a Lubavitcher. Shmuel was a Chabatzker. Okay? Rav was a Satmara. Right? Rav held, you got to take care of yourself first. You got to take care of yourself. Shmuel says, no, you got to share. And you see it especially on the next one. Umadlikin mener lener. On Chanukah, there's a machlokes. Rav says you're not allowed to light one of the neros, one of the wicks, from the fire of another wick. Each, because you're diminishing the first light. Shmuel holds madlik mener lener. Of course, you can light one wick from another lit. You're not diminishing from the first lit, from the first light. On the contrary, you're creating a new light. In other words, the Chabad way, right? The Chabad, you have to have outreach. You got to share. And as I paskin us that you're allowed to do it. The halacha to Rav Shimon b'Gereda, and he holds like Rav Shimon in the case of dragging furniture on Shabbos over the ground, which might create a furrow in the ground, which would of course be plowing. The halacha to Tanya Rav Shimon oimer goyra of the mita kisa b'kisa ufibsel b'Shabbos. A person is allowed to drag a bed, a chair, or a bench across the ground on Shabbos, as long as he does not intend to make a furrow. Now, this, by the way, works. This is called dover she'ena mischabin. So a thing that you do not have intent. I have no intentions of making a furrow. I don't want to make a furrow. I don't want to mess up my garden. I just want to get the bench from point A to point B, and it's very heavy, so I got to schlep it on the ground. Rabbi Yehuda says, listen, if there's a chance you're going to make a furrow, I'm not allowing you. Double she'ena mischabin osir. I hold just because you didn't have any intent, it's osir. If Shimon says double she'ena mischabin is mutter, and we paskin that way. Unless, of course, it's a psik ratio. If it's definitely going to happen. In other words, if you're in New York now, and the ground is as hard as a rock, right? So there's better than 50-50 chance this that I'm dragging the bench across the ground is not going to make a furrow. And I don't want to make a furrow in the ground, right? So Rabbi Shimon says you could do it. But if you're in Boca Raton and it's 80 degrees and it rained the other day and the ground is nice and soft, we're inevitably, if I schlep the bench, it's without a question going to make furrows in the ground. Even Rav Shimon would agree, double she'eni mischabin, psik ratio, but it's definitely going to happen. That you're not allowed to do. But anyways, what do you see over here? That Rabbah only held like Shmuel in 3 cases. Which 3 cases? That you're allowed to take tzitzis from one beged to another beged. You're allowed to take a light to another light, from one candle to another candle in Hanukkah. And that we hold double she'ena mischabin is mutter, like Shmuel held like Rav Shimon. But I see nothing over here. If according to you we held like Shmuel that ain kiddush ela b'makom suda, there's no sanctification except in the place of the meal, right? That would be a 4th case. And I hear he only holds with 3. And for the Gemara, kichumrei de Rav Aviyavi. Rabbah acted with the stringent rulings of Rav. Kulei de Rav lo yavid. But a lenient ruling of Rav, of course, he didn't hold. And in this case, kiddush b'makom suda is a chumrah, is a stringency. According to Rav, no, you can make kiddush and eat later. According to Shmuel, absolutely not. The kiddush is not a kiddush unless it's in the place of the meal. Now we have a 3rd opinion. The Rabbi Yochanan says, Af yidei yayin nami yotzu. Not only in shul, if the chazan in shul makes kiddush, not only are you yotzi, you fulfilled your obligation of being sanctifying the day of making kiddush, a mekadesh Shabbos. You've also satisfied the making of the bracha of Borei Pri Hagofen. That even if you go home now and you have yayin, wine, grape juice at your meal, you don't have to make a Borei Pri Hagofen. So Rabbi Yochanan is the biggest lenient one of them all. Okay? Va'az the Rabbi Yochanan l'tamei. And Rabbi Yochanan goes according to his reasoning. Okay, now we're on 101A3. 101A3. Va'az the Rabbi Yochanan l'tamei, the Omer Rav Chanan bar Abaya, Omer Rav Pedos, Omer Rav Pedos, Omer Rav Yochanan. They said it all in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Echad shinu yayin, whether one changes his wine. He makes a Borei Pri Hagofen on white wine, and then proceeds to drink red wine, or better yet, wine with sugar versus dry wine. Okay, we're now on 101B1. Amid Beis, Kuf Aleph, Amid Beis, the Echad Shinui Makoim, And or if he changes his place, go look at the Rashbam, left-hand side, the first Rashbam, the Echad Shini Mokoim, says the Rashbam, L'chol dover hanechel. In other words, we're not just talking about wine now, we're talking about all foods. If you change your place, L'chol dover hanechel, im oichel mimenu, mimoken zeh, v'chayze b'oichel b'moken ma'acher, if you start eating in one place, and then you go over to another place, ain't sarich levarich shniya. According to Rabbi Yochanan, you do not have to make a second bracha. If you made a Baruch name of Zaynis over here, and you walked out somewhere else, and there's somewhere else you continue to eat your bread or your cake, you don't have to make another Baruch name of Zaynis. It could go in, it can only work. That doesn't, it means you can't have a Hesech Das. What is Hesech Das? Hesech Das is forgetfulness. In other words, only if you eat your cookie here and then you walk away, but you still have in mind to continue eating your cookie. Freit the Gemara, is this factual? Meisvei, if they challenge Rabbi Yochanan's ruling, there's a brayso that says straight out, Shinoi Mokoim Tzarech Levarech. If you change your plates, you're absolutely required to make a second bracha. Shinoi Yayin Ein Tzarech Levarech. But changing of wine from white wine to red wine, from sugary wine to dry wine, that doesn't require a second blessing. Tiyufta to Rabbi Yochanan, says the Gemara, Tiyufta, you're right, forget Rabbi Yochanan. The halacha is not like Rabbi Yochanan, and in fact, if you take your cookie from one place, and now you carry your cookie to another place, you got to make a bracha again on your cookie. But wine, if you change the type of wine, that you don't have to, because wine is wine is wine is wine. Okay, a little further. Yosef Rabbi Aidi Bar Rabbi Chisda. Rabbi Aidi Bar Rabbi was sitting before Rabbi Chisda. What? Say it again.
Ask, but I thought that if you made Kiddush in Shul, and then you come home, don't you have to make Kiddush again?
Yeah.
According to this?
We hold that you do, because we're holding like Shmuel. We're holding like Shmuel. We hold like Shmuel ain't Kiddush for Malkim. We're doing it. Right, you have to remember the Gemara is saying, in all of these Gemaras, there's something you got to, right, there's something, right, I know you do, but there's something always to keep in mind. This is the reason why we do not paskin from a Gemara, because the Gemara gives us the full argument of everybody and doesn't usually tell us what exactly is where we're going. For that, we needed to see what the tradition was, to see what the Rif holds, what the Rambam holds, and ultimately the Shulchan Aruch, and so on and so forth. Yosef Rabbi Aidi Bar Oven Kamei de Rav Chisda. Rabbi Aidi Bar Oven was sitting before Rav Chisda. Yosef Rav Chisda became a Mishmei de Rav Huna. Rav Chisda was sitting and saying in the name of Rav Huna, oh, the Amrit Shini Mokim Tzarech Levarech. This that we just said, that if you change your place, you have to make a second bracha. Lo yishanu elami bayis l'bayis. That's only if you change from one house to another house. From one place to another place in the same house, it does not require a blessing. And this would seem to say that if you're under the same roof, it doesn't require. Again, this might go back to our other argument, is a second floor and a first floor, two different dwellings. So again, the poskim are very involved with that. Says the Gemara, Malay Rabbi Bar Ravin, and so too we taught in the Braises of the yeshiva of Rav Hinnock, and some say in the Braises of the yeshiva of Bar Hinnock, say just like what you just said. But did Rav Huna come to teach us something that was already taught in a Braisa? Elamai, says the Gemara, Rav Huna Masnisa, he never heard from that Braisa from the yeshiva of Rav Hinnock or Bar Hinnock. V'su Yasser Rav Chisda becoming Mishmei de Nafshe. And then Rav Chisda said something in his own name, a chiddush in his own name. Oh, the Amrit Shini Mokim Tzarech Levarech. This that we say, that a change of place Okay, a change of place. A change of place. A change of place requires a second bracha. Only in those things that you're eating that do not require an al hamichya, a bracha me'ein shalois afterwards. It only requires a barei nefashos. Over those, you have to make a second bracha in another place. But something that requires a bracha afterwards, either birchas hamazon or bracha me'ein shalosh, i.e., alamichya b'mekayim ein tzarich levarech. You don't have to bench if you go to it. You don't have to make a bracha again, another barin and zaynus, when you go to a second place. My tama lekvoya kame hadar. Another the place. It's the new place you're going is kaveya the suda. It's not considered. Take a look at Rashi. The first skinny line of Rashi on top. Avol devarim aturunim bracha la'achrayim minikaima. Koloima, to say bracha chashuva b'pnei atzma kegoyin shivas haminim, like in the case of the 7 things that come out, the pomegranate, the date, the fig, etc. from Eretz Yisrael. Since he didn't bless afterwards, he didn't make the alamichya. And he stood up, leilech, to go, l'makim acher, to another place, l'soyed al kaviyas harishon. He went to the other place with in mind to continue the kaviyas, what was established already at the first meal. Hilkach levarich achrayim bircha achas al shteyem. Lefneihem nami ein tzarich lavze levarich. Therefore, just like the bracha achrayna, the birchas the alamichya does not require going backwards. Right? What do you call it? You could cover both places you ate with one alamichya. You cover both eatings in the first place with one bracha of bayrim minei mizaynis. If you want to see it more, I would tell you to go into the Rashbam on the bottom, but we don't have to do it now. But if you take a look at the Rashbam on the bottom in the wide lines, you'll see that he gives a great explanation. He expands on the explanation that we just said now. Okay? So, all right, and now we're on 101b2, and somewhere over here, let me just see where we're gonna. Okay, you know what? We're gonna stop right over here because this Gemara keeps right on going. So let's stop right over here. We're gonna start again with Su Yosef Rav Chizah the Kamer Shmei Dinapshe tomorrow because that continues right into the next stop. Okay, so we're picking it up again with the 101b1, the Su Yosef Rav Chizah the Kamer Shmei Dinapshe. Again, this idea, and maybe tomorrow when we begin the shir, we'll go through the Rashbams on the bottom just so we can see a clarity in the evening. And this will take us all the way to 102. We'll be able to get to the bottom of 102 tomorrow. Very good. Everybody have a wonderful day.